Hi, this is Patty Hodge at Dr. Nurses Rock. This video is part of a series that we're doing on grief throughout the month of April. And today I would like you to meet another special guest, Ms. Valerie Varan. Valerie is a Colorado licensed professional counselor, holistic life coach, a lifelong spiritual experiencer. That's the interesting part. Quantum psychology pioneer and author of the Spiritual Experiencer self-help book, Living in a Quantum Reality, using quantum physics and psychology to embrace your higher consciousness. Valerie formerly worked in environmental engineering, and then she made a decision to incorporate all these things that were so important to her. She obtained a master's degree in counseling psychology at the University of Southern Mississippi and then left for Denver, Colorado, where she began her holistic integrative psychotherapy career. She did have a private practice. She had grown into experiencing all kinds of energy sensitivities, empaths, intuitives, and spiritual experiencers in her practice. And I think this is where this story starts, because she will tell you about her personal road with grief and how all of that has changed her, made her into the person that she is at this moment. So welcome, Valerie.
Patty, I'm so delighted to be here with you. And I so honor your experience with grief and loss. And what a beautiful way to honor that with this series, because grief and loss is certainly around us, surrounding us, day in and day out, affecting each and every one of us at some level.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful to you for coming and for helping our viewers understand things better when it comes to grief.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, start somewhere with tell us what that means to be a spiritual experiencer and what happened with counseling, and then move into this whole grief period for you.
Okay. Uh, yes, I've been a spiritual experiencer since birth. It's funny because in psychology, there's been a growing research in near death experiences, spiritually transformative experiences, out of body experiences, paranormal experiences. There's a lot of things happening. And most experiencers will have after effects. And so they have their life before and their life after. For me, I don't have a before because spiritually mystical experiences have been happening my entire life. Later on, if you want us to get into that, you can let me know. But with that, most experiencers grow up hearing ridicule because that's supposedly impossible, defies space time physics. And if you really think about it, our field of psychology has largely been very skeptical of anything truly spiritual, right? They're very materialist, theoretically minded. That means, oh, we are made of matter. There's this one space time reality, and that is it. This is the whole of reality. And so, with that logic, it makes sense that if you have these other experiences that seem to defy that belief, they dismiss it.
Yes.
Worse, in our profession, uh, it is really looked at as a hallucination, as a delusion, right? Spirituality, sense of spirituality, belief in spirituality or in God or other dimensional beings or angels or what have you has been dismissed as kind of weak minded at best. And so, with this topic of grief and loss, most people are going to experience grief and loss in that context.
Yes.
It's like, wow, I have just lost someone dear to me, whether it's their mother, their father, their brother, their sister, their children. And society and largely science is telling us, oh no, to believe in an afterlife is silly. It's not scientific, and you will never see them again. Ashes to ash, dust to dust. When we die, that's it. There's no continuation of consciousness. And so that alone for most people is going to create a huge hurdle for grief. Now, in my experience, it's very different because I've been having a two-way dynamic with the universe, if you will, for as long as I can remember, including my first spiritual download in the fourth grade happened to happen. It happened, I guess it was, yeah, fourth grade. We had been learning about, no, I take that back. Fourth grade was my first apport where an object appeared out of nowhere.
Okay.
But in sixth grade, we had just learned about atoms that day in science class. And I was on my bed really contemplating this homework about atoms. And this little sixth grader was in so deep of a, such deep thought. And I was truly asking the other side in my usual way. It's like, And I'm contemplating, well, how is it? Because, in science class, they depict them as these little round things in space, right? So I'm like, well, how does this atom know that it's part of the chair that I'm sitting on? And this atom right next to it, there's some kind of a line. How does it know it's part of my rear end on the chair that I'm sitting on? And in came this huge spiritual download where I was just being revealed in the way that the universe is conscious and alive at every level, including atoms and subatomic particles. Now, I would not have known the phrase quantum physics at the time, but that download certainly paved my way into looking at and reading as much quantum physics as I could get my hands on before I even became a therapist. And I remember a long time just kind of asking the universe, like, what is going on? Why am I being given this unquenchable thirst to not only study as much as I can about the world's religions, but also the developments in psychology? And as you might remember, we were finally getting to positive psychology and some of these other things.
Yes.
Um, and also quantum physics. And especially in the 70s, 80s, even 90s, it felt like those were three very disparate fields. And yet, finally, in the 2000s, like especially by 2010, I'm like, oh my gosh, it is so clear what they have in common. And I was so thankful to the universe for leading me and prompting me in these directions ahead of time instead of only now, coming on board, because now I can bring decades of looking into this with me, if you will. And it relates to grief and loss, because if we acknowledge that there is a spiritual dimension, multiple spiritual dimensions, that we are in fact a multidimensional type of cosmos, then all of a sudden things make sense. And quite frankly, there's a lot of research on after death communications and shared death communications, right? Look at how many people will say, yeah, I believe that after I lost my loved one, I was being contacted.
Yeah.
And not just through synchronicities, although sometimes through that, but even hearing voices, hearing very specific things in their ear, things that would be written off as, again, hallucinations or delusions. And so, as a spiritual experiencer, I don't have a before. I've always been born into this worldview, if you will, that usually experiencers develop afterwards, where before it's materialism and then it's multidimensional reality. Now, related to grief and loss, one of my most profound griefs was actually the loss of my spiritual identity, the loss of my purpose and career. And so let me backtrack a little bit to kind of say how that came about. I'm going to maybe address two caregiving instances that involved the biggest grief and loss for me. The first one was in 2006 when my husband was diagnosed with stage 3C colon cancer. And we had not even been married that many years. We met when I was 40, married when I was 42. And here I was just now 46, not even having that many years with him. And I just remember dropping to the ground in grief as he was being wheeled into surgery. Um, but there too, there were so many lessons learned, not only lessons that I could then share with others on, let's say, what is it like to caregive someone going through chemo and cancer and the profound angers and anxieties that it prompts in the person. And it's really, really intense. And unfortunately, the divorce rate in um, marriages during cancer is probably higher than people suspect. And I think it's because of this intense anger and the person that you're caregiving, in this case, my husband, it's just easy for that anger to ooze all over the caregiver, the person that's the closest to them. And a lot of people can't handle it and they leave and get divorced during people's cancer treatments. So that is a whole other topic. For me, it was a first profound example of what I call, well, I love the phrase in the spiritual communities of holding your light steady. That as we embody the spiritual nature, the spiritual layer of energies more, our light literally is growing, it's becoming more coherent, it's becoming brighter. And perhaps that's why, we see halos depicted on saints, is because
Yes.
it becomes quite visible. And that takes us into some energy and quantum physicsy topics that I'll leave for now. But so as we're holding our light steady, it does seem like we will have opportunities to test just how steady we're holding it. How
Mm.
coherent can we be in the midst of great loss and great challenge? So in the instance with my husband and the chemo, uh, which I won't elaborate too much, but I'll just say it certainly was my challenge to hold my light steady and be able to hold the light of unconditional love in that. And I was so happy I was able to do that. And so I didn't have near while the potential loss of my husband was, early on in the process was the worst. I feel like I got through that caregiving pretty unscathed in lots of regards. It did not prepare me at all for the second chapter. The second chapter was in 2017 when I basically made the decision, and this is where the personal loss and spiritual identity came in, but I made the personal decision to go ahead and close down my private practice in Denver and go ahead and move in, go back to Florida, my old high school home, move in with my elderly mother. My husband was a saint to come with me. And that was always a tough situation anyway, because quite a personality there. But let's just say I love Lucy, but with lots of anxiety and mental health issues as well as physical issues. And so I move in and I'm not knowing how long this will be. We never know in these journeys. Are we talking a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? What are we talking? And so in the beginning, I was not prepared for how quickly things would get bad because I was actually hoping that I could build some real quality relationship with my mother before her passing. And that was what I hoped. However, within the first couple of weeks of moving in, she had many where she died and came back um, death experiences. So the pacemaker quickly gave way to the defibrillator, and I will just say it was just over and over and over and over, where it was dramatic, it was intense. She had all kinds of, the physical things going on. And as her physical things worsened, the mental health challenges that she faced worsened.
Right.
And then, therefore, as a caregiver, we therapists know we're supposed to self-care and we're supposed to do all these things. And in the beginning, I could kind of do that, right? I could go get that walk in and go do some yoga. And God forbid I do my hair and brush my teeth later on. That was about all I had time for, especially as COVID hit and everything got worse. So the spiritual identity was such a loss because the universe, like you had read, I was in the environmental engineering field. And it was the universe basically giving me a bunch of messages about I needed to go into the field of psychology. And I was being pretty irreverent with spirit. And I was like, hell no, I won't go. It's very Freudian. It's very materialism. Why should I do that? It did not sound pleasant at all until I finally surrendered. And so I was glad I surrendered because by the time I got into it and got to the point where spirit was prompting me to private practice, right when my husband was, diagnosed with cancer. And that's another synchronicity that if you ever want to talk about, I can get there. It was an unbelievable synchronicity about spirit supporting me no matter what, and about my leap into faith no matter what, and following what the spirit was asking me to do. But but since it was something I went into later, I was not even like barely 10 years into private practice when I had to give it up. And so it felt like so illogical, like everything that my whole life and purpose was building up, which my identity was associated with my spiritual self, my spiritual mission. And all of a sudden it seemed like spirit kind of in a way was asking me to give that up. But was it, or was that me? And I'm caregiving because there's nobody else and I can't just see her not have anybody. And as I said to my husband, like in 2016, I already had to like leave Colorado 4 times to fly and caregive mom. It's like, how do you maintain a private practice if all these things keep happening and you keep having to drop everything to fly? So that didn't even seem to be like that it was going to work at all. Anyway, so getting here, right? Like you're already having such grief and loss about such this big part of who you are. And then all of a sudden, the intensity of the situation was such, I was not prepared for the physical onslaught that I was about ready to have happen to me, much less mom. And what I also noticed is in private practice, I started getting more energy sensitives and different kinds of people that I didn't even know were out there because I had never really met fellow, let's say, energy experiencers and what have you. But the universe seemed to just keep sending them to me. And then so I learned a lot because, for instance, I remember some medical intuitives telling me, oh, yes, that's exactly how I experience my medical intuition. That's how I know what's going on with them because I feel it in my own body. I did not have that. But then when I came to Florida, the longer I was caregiving mom, the more I was developing into a medical intuitive.
Right.
And what that really meant was the energy sensitivity was getting so strong that everything that was happening to her, I could feel in my own body. So when she was having the heart issues, I was feeling it in my own heart. When she's having difficult breathing, I could feel it in my own. When her bladder and kidneys and whatever are affected, I can feel it in my own. Um, and so I would say there was such a cascade that happened. The actual stress, the inflammation, and then on top of that, being more energy sensitive, it was like this cascade of first developing trigger finger. And then next thing you know, my platelets have really spiked off the chart. My hair stopped growing. My brain, I watched as my cognition was just deteriorating. For example, trying to write a check. Most of us, when we've had to write a check, it's just kind of almost autopilot. I increasingly had to concentrate very hard to write out a check. I mean, it felt like it took me a whole minute just to write out who the check was to, and I had to really think about it. And I watched my handwriting turn more chicken scratch, more looking like my mother's chicken scratch as dementia was starting to set in more. And I had had former clients that ended up eventually getting diagnosed with schizophrenia. So I had come to recognize handwriting when the brain is really being affected. And I was looking at it going, oh my God, this is happening to my brain.
Yes.
Um, so my own bladder and kidneys, it got to the point where I was having to run to the restroom every 2 hours at least. Dry eyes started taking hold. I had intense neuropathy all over my body where it almost felt like there was a glove over my body. It's like if you would try to run your finger over the skin, you really couldn't feel that. But underneath, there was a weird sensation. And all I can say is I started like almost like clawing at my thighs because it was just this indescribable feeling was just literally starting to drive me crazy, I thought. More skin cancers started popping up, tinnitus started popping up. So it was just interesting how when you're doing all this caregiving, you don't do anything about this. Like I said, you barely have time to, go to the restroom, brush your teeth, and hurry up and dive into the onslaught of what's happening next. And of course, COVID hit. So I was going through the COVID years where we did hunker down with mom. That was the decision that was made. And it felt like there was a year where we didn't really leave the house. And I probably wasn't more than 10 feet away from her. Maybe at night only while she was sleeping. Maybe I was now 30 feet away from her. But that energy. So if we bring it to coping, I would say that when I couldn't do my regular routines or self care, and all I could do is try to figure out how, after getting everybody to bed, right? I wanted everybody in bed. Now I can be by myself, start clearing my energy field. For some reason, Gregorian chants, the monk music was the only music that was actually quite settling. I could feel its vibrational having an effect on my body. I would talk to my cells every night. The more I kept becoming like a medical intuitive, the more I was talking to my cells saying, do not resonate with her, do not resonate with her. And that's a technical phrase also,
Yes.
but um, but I was literally trying to set an energetic boundary there. And when you tune into someone, when your heart loves easily and you're tuning in, it's interesting. The more we understand consciousness, the more we may start understanding that we're literally tuning into a cloud of consciousness that has information and structure and topology there. And as we're doing it, resonance entrainment starts taking over, and we start having these mutual vibratory effects on one another. And that has been shown and demonstrated by the organization HeartMath when it comes to electromagnetic energies and heart and brain and other people and what have you. But I think it's true even non-locally. And we need quantum theories to help us understand that. But imagine that we're tuning in, even at a distance, which is probably also how, when we're having after death communications with loved ones who's passed, they have noticed that when there's a lot of love, there's a huge bond there.
Mhm.
These people, right, are emotionally connected really intensely. It probably is, the heart space is probably what's responsible for making these non-local long distance phone calls, if you will, to, to spirit and to other people and to their energy fields. But again, I noticed that the more I tuned into mom, just always needing to be responsible for what's happening next, and no wonder it was in my body. So no wonder I had to set more intentional energy boundaries about quit resonating with her, quit resonating with her, love her, but keep your energetic distance, was what I kept trying to tell my body.
And I ask, but by telling your body that, that's one thing. Is there some other way that we can protect ourselves? Or is that just it, just to give the command to the physical?
There are there are a lot of ways energetic. Let me come back to that
Yes.
because I might want to do that almost like its own chapter, if you will, because but I don't want us to underestimate what talking to the cells does
Okay.
because what's interesting is most of us are thinking again almost as if there's nothing in this body that's alive and conscious. We are really kind of taught we're just like a machine. We're just a bunch of things, and it's minimized as biochemical signaling and chemistry, right? Mostly biochemistry.
Right.
They don't really even acknowledge the neuronal signaling, which is electrical, which is actually what is responsible for the activity at the synapses, responsible for the biochemistry. Like
Right.
the energy part of it gets largely ignored. And yet, human intention and there's all this research about that interface and what does it do with intention. And so, if we start realizing that actually every part of us just might be alive and conscious, and that's why it's responding to the environment the way it does, and why our negative self talk, like, look at who among the audience doesn't have negative self talk. It's part
Right.
of our human developmental path that we are here to address, right? We have so much negative self talk, and I think people underestimate the amount of damage that actually does. Because if we did some experientials, which we can do at some point if you want, but it's interesting how if you repeat, let's say, the word hate several times, you will notice the body getting increasingly tense. You will notice a reaction in the same way that if we start imagining biting into a really sour lemon and we're describing it, it's almost automatic that we have saliva, start coming into our mouth. Like right now, I'm salivating big time just talking about this lemon. And as you and I know in neuroscience, they're becoming more clear that there's not much difference in the way the brain acts to something we're imagining and something that we're actually living in.
Right.
So imagine if we take that the next step further and realize the brain and body, every cell are really antenna. They're receiving all this information. We give it information, whether we say it out loud or in our mind. We're directing information at this body,
Right.
and it's responding regularly. And so when it comes to energy boundaries, like talking to ourselves can be huge. And I think that type of meditation probably helped me the most uncover and unravel my physical symptoms. So if I kind of cut to that part,
Yes.
um, with all these symptoms that were mounting when mom first passed, so by that time it was July 31st, 2021. And so and we weren't, I was still dealing with the aftermath of things and, doing the memorial, like, and I'm still in the house, and I'm still in the house today. And it had become quite a PTSD environment for me, right? Like, even, I'll just say this past December, when I was getting ready for the holidays and had decorated the living room, it was the first year that I could actually sit in the living room and not feel PTSD triggers. And I was so happy. because it's like, oh my gosh, it's taken me almost 4 years. I know so many tools, and it almost seemed proportional, right? It was about 4 years of caregiving and about 4 years of recovery. It's
Right.
interesting how proportional that was. But as I was, especially 2022, I was devoting full time trying to recover from what I knew was I had developed diagnosable PTSD. Um, you can't have your mother dying on bathroom floors and bloods and hospitals and broken bones and bathroom accidents and bathroom episodes and shower episodes, and you can't have a lot of things happen and they not become associated with the environment, and so the house. And so I'm still in the house, and I know that's why it took me longer. But as I share the recovery journey, I would say it was definitely many-fold, many dimensions at the same time. On one, I knew for my sanity, I had to figure out how to get my career back, how to get my purpose back, how to get back into that sense of self.
Yes.
And so as I was doing that, I also started going, let's say, to acupuncture, because let's say if I know I can go to someone really good with acupuncture and they can, do all the different pulses that they can give me a status report on what is going on with my body and each, the kidneys and the bladder and the gallbladder meridians and all these things. And so I was able to get the feedback. But let's say for neuropathy, for example, that was the worst. I couldn't stand it anymore. I'm like, I've got to go do some acupuncture for neuropathy. And by the way, my mother had neuropathy, so I had already been to all those uh, neurologists with her. Those were some traumatic events alone. And all they had as an answer was to throw gabapentin at her, which then also had side effects.
Right.
So I knew that that route was not going to give me anything helpful. So I went to acupuncture, and I would notice that I would have great relief. Let's say the pain is the annoyance is like a 10 out of a 10. And I get through acupuncture and it's down to like 2 or 1. And it's staying like a 2, maybe sometimes a 1. But by the time I'm back to the next session, and now I'm trying to remember if I went weekly or every other week in the beginning, but I would notice that it was back, and I would do more acupuncture and the pattern repeated, right? So after probably about 6 to 8, I'm like, I'm going to have to get back to doing this myself and getting back into some of the energy healing that I had been taught. And I was just too tired to do, right? Sometimes you just want to go to someone and say, please do, just heal me. It's like going for a massage. You can self massage, but having someone other massage you is way better. So, so it was interesting because I had really been thinking of the quantum touch courses that I had taken way back when I had taken everything they offered, every course that they offered, all through the advanced courses. And I was so longing to get back with that kind of energy and those people and those reminders. And in a way, having, because of COVID, they were now online.
Right.
And now I could keep the recordings and play them as often as I want. And they're beautiful. But I really, let's say, for just using an example, there's one of the modules where we're being led through, like, getting into the derma layer of the skin where the blood vessels and the nerves and elastin and collagen and fibroblasts and so much activity for the skin, but also the nerves. And so I would do those, but even in my just regular daily meditative stance, I would, as often as possible, keep going to the derma layer in my mind's eye. Again, right? Brain doesn't know much difference between being there and imagining being there. So
Right.
I would imagine being in the derma layer. I would imagine and see the nerves regrowing, the dendrites and the connections and the root system and the tree branches, and just growing and being healthy, and the blood flow circulating better. And I started doing that a lot. And I will just say that I have gotten my neuropathy down to mostly zero. Sometimes I might feel a one, maybe every once in a while, something odd. I'll feel it for a two for a little bit, but mostly it's one or zero. And that happened probably within, I'm going to say, maybe 8 weeks of doing this kind of regularly. And it has just stayed. And I'm not even doing it as regularly anymore. I did it mostly between, let's say, July and December, once a week. That was it. After that, I tried to do it on my own. But it's amazing how taking that into my own hands with my own meditations and talking to my cells, and just envisioning that you're communicating with these parts of your body and that you're asking it what to do.
Yes.
And my hair started growing. The hair follicles are at that level. So all of a sudden my hair is mostly not grown for over 7 years now. And the last time I went to my hairdresser, she was amazed. She's like, what are you doing differently? Because all of a sudden your hair is growing again. And I was like, I know, right? And so it was as if that work on that part of my body related to the neuropathy had also stimulated the hair follicles. And like I said, over the past couple of months, I had started doing it more loosely, but just more throughout the day, even loosely. And next thing I had like this much, which I could pull it down if we really wanted to, but I could see like this much growing, and I could even say like all of this is filled in. This was completely gone. This was completely gone and starting to fill in. And so it's amazing what really connecting with the energies of the body and just going in, assuming that every piece of us is alive and conscious. It's amazing all of the ripple effects that has had on healing, and I think really resonates with energy healers, and
Yes.
it helps us understand why other energy techniques would then work. So if I think of all of that work that I've done on my body, and by the way, my brain is finally about back. I write a check almost as quickly, and my handwriting is almost as nice as it maybe used to be. Um, it'll be interesting. The trigger finger is gone. Um, it's going to be interesting next time I go in May to the doctor to see kind of what my platelets are doing. The bladder, again, talking to the bladder, saying thank you so much for what you do, and can you please strengthen for me so that I can go an entire night without having to get up every 2 hours. And it started getting better. Like it started getting to where I was only getting up maybe once, and then largely not at all, and maybe once. So it's amazing how much of repair starts coming in when you connect with self. And I think that dovetails into regular psychology in a profound way too, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because self care, self love, like we start noticing the effect of that, the effect of our words on us, if you will. And I used all of that. And just as an aside, really, the degree to which we have self love is the degree to which we have other love. Because when we withhold it from ourselves, we are going to withhold it from everybody else. And so when I also think of what was so foundational in the ability to start healing was forgiveness. I had to really work through. There was a lot of traditional homework I gave myself on processing my anger and processing the rage and the hatred that I didn't even know I could feel, by the way. So that was some loss of self identity, because I'm like, who is this person? I didn't even know I was capable of such negative, intense emotions as rage and hatred. But as involved with the whole hospital medical system as I got, and as horrible as it went, um, I mean, literally breaking my mother's brain and wheeling her out in straitjackets. I mean, I can't even tell you how rageful and hatred I became. And so I really had to work through all of those really strong emotions, really make sure I, like, every single night, along with the monk music, I'm like writing down what my emotions are and what are they really about. And that's an act of self-love, isn't it? Because emotionally, you're just allowing yourself to accept. It's not like you like it necessarily, but you at least you hear yourself. You just give yourself that time and attention to really understand what's going on with great compassion. And I think that's such an active self-love that's having energy effects to the whole body. So working through to be preparing for forgiveness, being able to forgive. And my measure of forgiveness is when it no longer triggers me, I know I've let it go.
There you
I
go.
know that it's not affecting me anymore. And so that came in progress, but it was beautiful to be able to sit there this Christmas looking at the Christmas tree and the decorations, sitting in the exact same living room and with her almost exact same decorations. And that's a long story, but I'm like, wow, in a way it's probably a good lesson that I couldn't change things and that I had to stay here during this time for certain reasons. But in a way, it was a good lesson because instead of coping by leaving, which we usually do in traumatic
Yeah.
situations, most of us don't recommend to clients that they keep staying in the traumatic situation because it is easier to recover if you're not in it. But I learned that it took, again, proportional time, but I was able to work through it, truly get it out of my body, truly work on forgiveness. I actually called her up. I was actually speaking um, to her, trying to wish her well, because in the beginning I was like, oh no, I do not want any visits. I don't want any contact at all. I'm tearing up every contract we've ever apparently written at some soul level. and and I had to work through a lot. I did get an after death communication from my father where essentially he appeared in a really, really vivid dream, very close. And I could see mom. It looked like she was off in the background, almost as if she was sitting on a concrete planter, facing, to my right, and basically he appearing, saying, "I've got her," go forth and prosper, kind of like a message. But I knew I was not prepared to have any interaction with her energy for quite some time. So between the acupuncture, when I think of all the self care, right? So between processing the deep emotions, being able to hear myself, and then getting through forgiveness, all of a sudden, forgiveness allows the energy field to really clear up.
Yeah.
To then where, when you're doing all the imagery or the quantum touch or whatever energy modality of choice, it really can take hold. Um, you'll probably enjoy this one measure and story of energy work. Another thing I did was, before I found the quantum touch course, and I'm in Central Florida now, these things are hard to find, but I'm like, oh, universe, I so need somebody to work on me besides the acupuncturist that I have to drive an hour and a half to go see. And I found this person who supposedly is like a energy healer, shaman energy. And I'm like, hey, I'll take it. Anyway, what was interesting is I had just been to acupuncture, let's say, and he was telling me that the state of my body, I had a lot of heart congestion. And this reminds me of another symptom that I'd kind of forgotten about. After mom passed, I kept saying to the primary care doctor, I don't know what's going on, but I feel as if my left breast is at least twice as heavy as my right breast. So of course she's sending me for mammograms. She's like, I can't feel anything, but it was really palpable for me. Anyway, fast forward and that went on like 2 years. Nobody could figure out what was going on. They couldn't find it physically. I'm at acupuncture. He's telling me lots of heart congestion. I go to this energy shaman person, and after the session is over, she was like, woo, that was a workout. And she was telling me how she really had to wrestle an entity from my heart area. And she's like, I'm not sure if it was mom. It seemed like a woman, but she felt like she was really having to really try to pull and convince this entity to get out of me. She was saying how like this Native American had been there trying to help, and another spiritual being, and uh, I'm trying to make a very long story shorter, but it was interesting. By the time it was all over, two things. I go to acupuncture the next time, and he's like, "Oh, no more heart congestion,"
Great.
and all of that left breast heaviness vanished, and it has not come back.
Listen, it's
So
all so fascinating. Everything that you're telling us is fascinating and so helpful to people who have these experiences and don't have a way to express it or even put words to it. So what a gift you are. And I don't want to rattle any cages, but I think your mom was a gift to you too, because she led you
of
to
course,
this place, right? And may she rest in peace and
truly,
joy. And but this has been an amazing conversation with you. And I know that you have to come back because there's just too much more to explore. So this whole topic is about grief and self-care and helping people to uh, have a vocabulary, have some way of explaining what's happening to themselves, and to know that anything that's happening can be addressed, in some way. And thank you because you just did marvelous miracles for people, and I don't even know if you know that you did that. So I'm going to say that up front, how wonderful
oh,
you
thank
are.
you. It's hard to believe. Thank you.
Well, I hate to cut this conversation off. We're going to have to make a part two, and I hope that's okay with you to please come in and talk with me again.
Absolutely.
Uh, Valerie, it's been a real pleasure.
So good, Patty, to talk to you. And like you said, there's so much grief and loss out there. So at least now clients know a way that they have to address it physically and emotionally and mentally and financially and career wise. Like there's a lot that goes in the decision. There's a lot that can happen that's unexpected, but we can heal. And even if it takes the proportional amount of time, we can and do heal. And the more we connect to our bodies and realize that our bodies are like sponges for energy, but the quicker we can get to healing when we move into forgiveness and just energetically and visualization, reconnect so much with ourselves so that the body can heal.
Absolutely. And we don't have to go it alone. And we probably shouldn't try to do it alone. Make sure that
Exactly.
we have our community behind us to hold us up. So Valerie, I will see you again.
Sounds good, Patty.
Blessings to
Such a
you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.